That morning, no one expected a single act of defiance to change military history. What began as routine training became a moment every soldier on base would remember, and one that would test the difference between following orders and doing what's right. The sun hung low over Fort Bragg, casting long shadows across the firing range. Dust motes danced in the early light as the K-9 unit assembled in formation. Sergeant Elena Vasquez stood at attention, her boots planted firmly in the packed earth, the weight of her tactical vest a familiar anchor. At her side, Rex, her Belgian Malinois, sat rigid, his ears perked, black eyes scanning the horizon with the quiet intensity only a trained handler could read. The air carried the sharp tang of gun oil and dew-kissed grass, undercut by the distant rumble of Humvees on the access road. "Unit, report!" barked Captain Harlan Reed, the range officer, his voice cutting through the morning chill like a knife. He paced the line of handlers, his polished boots kicking up faint puffs of dirt. Reed was a fixture here, 20 years in, broad-shouldered and unyielding, the kind of officer who measured success by split-second obedience. The K-9 team, 12 strong, snapped to respond, names, ranks, and K-9 partners recited in crisp unison. Elena's turn came third. "Sergeant Vasquez, handler to Rex, all systems green, sir." Rex didn't flinch, his flank brushing her leg in silent affirmation. The routine was etched into their bones. Fort Bragg's live-fire exercises tested more than marksmanship for the K-9 unit. It was about integration, dogs detecting threats amid the chaos of simulated ops. Today's drill, a standard patrol simulation across the range, sweeping for improvised explosives while small arms fire echoed from adjacent lanes. Elena had run this 100 times. Rex, at 5 years old, was her shadow, bonded through endless hours of scent work and trust building. He wasn't just a dog, he was precision incarnate, his nose a tool that had saved lives in deployments from Afghanistan to the Horn of Africa. "Handlers, advance on my mark," Reed ordered, checking his stopwatch. The line moved forward in tight formation, boots thudding rhythmically against the ground. Radios crackled with acknowledgements, static-laced voices confirming positions. Eleanor kept her pace measured, hand resting lightly on Rex's harness. The range stretched ahead, berms of red clay rising like silent sentinels, pockmarked from years of impacts. A faint wind stirred the scrub brush, carrying the metallic scent of spent casings. They reached the first marker, a chain-link barrier simulating urban debris. Rex trotted ahead, nose low, methodically air-scenting. Elena watched him, her breath steady, attuned to the subtle cues, the flick of his tail, the pause in his gait. The other handlers followed suit, their dogs fanning out in practice sweeps. From the observation tower, spotters noted times and anomalies, their binoculars glinting in the sun. Then it happened. 50 yards into the crossing, Rex halted. Not a gradual slowdown, but an abrupt plant of his paws, hackles rising like a ripple across still water. Elena felt the tension transmit through the leash. "Easy, boy," she murmured, voice low and even, crouching to his level. His eyes locked on a patch of uneven ground ahead, disturbed soil, camouflaged by sparse grass. The rest of the unit pressed on, but Rex refused, a low whine escaping his throat, the alert signal they'd drilled into him. "Vasquez, keep formation!" Reed's command boomed from the flank, his face tightening. The captain strode over, other handlers glancing back with disciplined curiosity. Elena's pulse quickened, but she held position, scanning Rex's body language. This wasn't hesitation, it was certainty. "Sir, he's signaling. Possible hazard." Her words were factual, stripped of plea, but Reed's expression hardened. "Negative. It's clear ground. We've swept it twice this week. Move out." The wind picked up, whispering through the range wires, but Elena's focus narrowed to Rex. He'd detected VX residue in a mock ambush last month, earning the unit a commendation. Dismissing him now felt like ignoring a compass in fog. Around them, the drill continued. Muffled pops from the firing line, the hum of a drone overhead for aerial oversight. But here, in this pocket of earth, doubt crept in. Protocol demanded compliance. Rex demanded trust. "Sergeant, that's an order." Reed repeated closer now, his shadow falling over them. The other handlers paused at the far marker, waiting for the all clear. Elena met his gaze, her hand steady on the leash. "With respect, sir, Rex doesn't. False alarm? Permission to investigate?" The words hung, a quiet fracture in the chain of command. Reed's jaw set, weighing the delay against the routine. In the distance, a helicopter's rotors began to thrum, signaling the next phase. Before he could respond, Rex lunged forward, not in advance, but in urgent circles around the spot, barking sharply. The sound pierced the morning, drawing eyes from the tower. Elena unclipped the leash, letting him work, her gloved hands probing the soil. It gave way too easily, loose dirt over a concealed depression. "IED simulation," she called, but her gut twisted. This wasn't marked on the range map. Reed radioed the control shack. "Tower, confirm sweep logs." Static answered, then a terse reply. "Affirmative, Captain. All clear." But Rex's frenzy escalated, pawing at the edge. Elena's fingers brushed something metallic, a rusted canister, half buried, its seal cracked. The acrid whiff hit her. Not training simulant, but real chemical traces, faint but unmistakable. An old stockpile, forgotten or abandoned, triggered by the dog's nose. Alarms blared from the tower as spotters scrambled. "Halt all movement! Evacuate sector!" The range fell into controlled chaos, handlers recalling dogs with sharp whistles, boots retreating in reverse formation. Reed's face paled, orders overlapping in his headset. Elena knelt by Rex, stroking his flank as he sat alert. Mission complete. "Good boy," she whispered, the bond between them a steady pulse amid the unraveling. Word spread fast through the base. By midday, the EOD team arrived, hazmat suits gleaming under the rising sun. They confirmed it, a buried cache from Cold War-era tests, unstable and unmarked. Its vapors undetectable to human senses, but screaming to Rex. Elena stood at the perimeter watching the extraction, Reed silent beside her. "You saved the unit," he said finally, voice gruff. But his eyes held questions about protocol, about her choice to trust the dog over the logbook. As the sun climbed, casting harsh light on the exposed earth, Eleanor clipped Rex's leash. The routine had shattered, exposing cracks in the system. What began as defiance now rippled outward, forcing a reckoning. In the rigid world of ranks and reports, one handler's conscience and one dog's instinct had just rewritten the rules. The afternoon sun beat down on the EOD team's cordoned perimeter, turning the firing range into a haze of heat and tension. Sergeant Elena Vasquez stood at ease just outside the yellow tape, Rex at her heel, his tongue lolling slightly as he panted in the rising warmth. The Belgian Malinois leaned against her leg, a subtle press of fur and muscle that grounded her amid the swirl of activity. Technicians in bulky suits moved methodically, their tools humming as they mapped the site's radius. Voices muffled through respirators. The air carried a sterile tang of decontamination foam mixed with the earthy residue of disturbed soil. Captain Harlan Reed approached from the command tent, his clipboard clutched like a shield. His uniform, still crisp despite the dust, bore the faint creases of hurried consultations. "Vasquez," he said, voice low but firm, stopping a respectful distance away. "Debrief in 15, bring Rex." It wasn't a request. The chain of command reasserted itself even in crisis. Eleanor nodded, her posture unchanging. "Yes, sir." She watched him retreat, his steps measured, betraying none of the earlier uncertainty. The unit's handlers had been stood down, dispersed to the barracks for after-action reviews. But Elena's role lingered. Rex's alert demanded scrutiny. Back at the K-9 kennels, the routine resumed with quiet efficiency. The low-slung buildings hummed with the soft whir of ventilation fans designed to filter scents and maintain calm. Elena led Rex inside, the cool air a relief against their skin. She filled his water bowl from the spigot, the splash echoing off concrete walls lined with steel runs. Other dogs paced in their enclosures, tails thumping against chain link as handlers logged the morning's events. Sergeant Mike Torres, Elena's squadmate, glanced up from his notepad. "Heard Rex pulled a miracle out there. You two okay?" His tone was professional, laced with the easy respect of shared deployments. "We're fine," Elena replied, kneeling to check Rex's paws for abrasions. The dog's pads were toughened from years of terrain work, but she ran her fingers over them anyway, a ritual of care. "Just protocol now." Torres nodded, jotting a note. "Reed's calling it a win, but Brass is en route. Something about range logs." He didn't elaborate. In their world, speculation yielded to facts. Elena clipped Rex into his run, murmuring a command in Dutch, "Blijf," and he settled on his mat, eyes following her every move. Their bond was unspoken, forged in the repetition of drills, scent cones in the pre-dawn fog, obedience under simulated fire. Rex wasn't property, he was partner, his instincts an extension of her own judgment. The debrief convened in the unit's briefing room, a Spartan space with folding chairs around a scarred oak table. Maps of the range pinned to the walls showed grid lines and hazard markers, now outdated in light of the discovery. Captain Reed stood at the head, flanked by Lieutenant Sarah Klein, the K-9 coordinator, her tablet glowing with preliminary reports. 6 handlers filled the seats, Elena among them, Rex lying alert at her feet. The room smelled of coffee grounds and oiled leather, the clock on the wall ticking with military precision. "Incident summary," Reed began, his voice steady as he projected the EOD findings. Slides flickered. Aerial photos of the depression, chemical analysis confirming trace sarin precursors from a 1980s stockpile, buried during experimental tests and lost to paperwork. Unmarked, unstable, could have vented under stress. Vasquez's team halted exposure. Nods rippled through the group, but Reed's gaze lingered on Elena. "Alert was unprompted. Explain." Elena leaned forward slightly, her hands clasped on the table. "Rex signaled at grid 4712, sir. Behavioral cues, freeze, vocalization, circling, consistent with explosive or hazardous detection." She kept it clinical, drawing from their training manual. Klein interjected, scrolling her tablet. "Logs show 2 sweeps this week. Negative. How'd he pick it up?" Elena met her eyes evenly. "Vapors, ma'am. Faint dispersal. Human sweeps rely on visual and metal detectors. Rex's olfactory threshold is parts per billion." Rex shifted at her feet, a soft huff escaping him, as if underscoring the point. Reed paced, boots echoing on the linoleum. "Protocol requires confirmation before deviation. You held position against advance order." It wasn't accusation, but the weight of command hung in the words. The other handlers exchanged glances. Torres's jaw tightened imperceptibly. Elena's response came measured. "Affirmative, sir, but Rex's training integrates with handler discretion under FM 319-4. Delay prevented potential breach." She cited the field manual without flourish, her voice a thread of steel in the room's tension. Klein tapped her screen. "EOD confirms, another 10 yards, and the unit crosses vapor plume. Casualties likely." A murmur stirred, quickly quelled. Reed halted, rubbing his chin. "Noted, but this sets precedent. Dogs don't override logs." The implication settled. Trust the system, or risk fracture. Elena felt the pull, duty to chain of command versus the loyalty that had just averted disaster. Rex's head rested on her boot, warm and unwavering. As the meeting adjourned, handlers filed out to tend equipment, the clatter of leashes and gear filling the corridor. Reed pulled Elena aside near the door. "Good work, Sergeant, but next time radio first." His tone softened fractionally, a nod to the save. "Unit owes you." She saluted crisply. "Just doing the job, sir." Outside, the base stirred toward evening stand-to, sentries changing at the gates, the distant call of a bugle cutting the air. In the kennel later, as twilight filtered through the slats, Elena brushed Rex's coat with a curry comb, the rhythmic strokes a meditation. The base's floodlights hummed to life, casting long shadows across the runs. Word had trickled from higher echelons, an inquiry into range maintenance, questions about archival oversights. Elena's defiance, born of instinct, now echoed in reports climbing the ladder. Rex nuzzled her hand, his eyes reflecting the dim light, a silent pact amid the institution's unyielding structure. By nightfall, the perimeter lights outlined the secured site, a reminder of fragility beneath routine. Elena locked the kennel door, the click resounding like a promise. The morning's alert had exposed more than chemicals. It revealed the thin line between obedience and foresight. In the quiet hours, as rotors whirred from the helipad, she wondered how far the ripples would reach, through ranks, through reviews, testing the bonds that held them all. The first light of dawn filtered through the barracks blinds, painting stripes across the concrete floor. Sergeant Elena Vasquez rose before reveille, her movements precise as she laced her boots, the leather creaking softly in the quiet. Rex stirred in his adjacent run, a low rumble in his throat acknowledging her presence. The kennel air held the faint musk of fur and kibble, mingled with the crisp edge of impending rain. Last night's reflections lingered, but duty erased them. The base operated on schedule, unyielding. By 0600, the K-9 unit formed up outside the command building, ranked straight under the overcast sky. Captain Harlan Reed inspected them personally, his eyes sharp as he walked the line. "Full readiness check," he announced, voice carrying over the patter of light drizzle on the tarmac. Handlers recited gear status, harnesses secure, scent kits calibrated, while dogs sat vigilant, rain beading on their coats. Elena stood third in line, Rex's flank warm against her knee. The discovery had prompted a lockdown on the range, but training shifted to auxiliary fields. Obedience drills and scent discrimination under controlled conditions. "Proceed to Grid Alpha," Reed ordered, consulting his tablet. The unit marched out, boots splashing through shallow puddles, the scent of wet earth rising. Elena's mind replayed the debrief. Reed's measured warning about protocol clashing with the EOD team's quiet gratitude. Whispers among handlers hinted at an incoming inspector from 08 Airborne Corps, drawn by the stockpile revelation. Archival errors from decades past now demanded accountability, and Elena's role placed her at the center. At the auxiliary field, a fenced expanse of mown grass dotted with pylons, the drill commenced. Handlers deployed dogs in pairs for tandem sweeps, simulating patrol under low visibility. Elena partnered with Sergeant Torres, Rex leading while his dog, Luna, flanked. "Pattern right, 10 meters," she called, her voice cutting the mist. Rex moved fluidly, nose quartered against the wind, pausing at mock hides, rubber simulants buried shallow. Torres mirrored, Luna's tail a metronome of focus. From the sidelines, spotters timed responses. Their notepads sodden but steady. Midway through, a Humvee rolled up to the perimeter, tires churning mud. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Hale disembarked, his rain slicker emblazoned with Corps insignia. Reed saluted briskly, falling in step as Hale approached the line. "Captain, walk me through yesterday's anomaly." Hale's tone was neutral, a fact-gatherer's probe, but his presence amplified the stakes. The unit halted, dogs recalled with sharp whistles, forming a loose semicircle. Elena clipped Rex's leash, feeling the collective shift, eyes forward, postures rigid. Reed gestured to the group. "Sergeant Vasquez, front and center." Eleanor stepped forward, Rex at heel, saluting Hale. Water dripped from her cap brim, but she held steady. "Sir." Hale nodded, scanning her and the dog with appraising eyes. "Your report indicates deviation from advance. Elaborate." Elena recounted the sequence: Rex's freeze, the order to proceed, her request to investigate. She kept it chronological, citing behavioral indicators and olfactory thresholds, her words clipped like a field log. Rex sat unmoving, his gaze fixed on Hale's boots, sensing the scrutiny. Hale turned to Reed. "Logs cleared the sector, yet the dog alerted. Explain the discrepancy." Reed's response was direct. "Archival oversight, sir. EOD traced it to 87 tests. Unlogged relocation post-Cold War drawdown." The colonel frowned, flipping through a folder from his aide. Documents rustled in the damp air, faded manifests, redacted memos revealing bureaucratic lapses. "This isn't isolated. Similar reports from Bragg and Pendleton. Your handler's intervention exposed it." His gaze returned to Eleanor. "Risk to the unit?" "High, sir," she replied evenly. "Vapor plume could incapacitate within minutes. Rex detected at trace levels." Hale knelt briefly, extending a gloved hand. Rex sniffed it warily but didn't react, earning a faint nod from the colonel. "Impressive work, but protocol breach invites questions. Chain of command relies on verified intel." The words landed like rain on canvas, affirmation laced with caution. Torres shifted nearby, his expression neutral, but Elena caught the undercurrent. Her choice had elevated the unit's profile, for better or scrutiny. As Hale conferred with Reed, the drizzle thickened, handlers huddling under ponchos, while dogs shook off water with muffled thuds. The inspector circled back. "Vasquez, your discretion saved lives, but it bypassed procedure. Recommend formal review?" It was a question posed to the group, testing responses. Reed interjected, "Affirmative, sir, to refine integration protocols." Elena felt the weight, her loyalty to Rex now under institutional lens, a potential pivot for reform or reprimand. The session wrapped under gathering clouds, Hale departing with promises of a full audit. Back at the kennels, the unit dispersed to dry gear, the air thick with steam from towels and heaters. Elena toweled Rex, his coat shedding droplets onto the grate. "You did good," she murmured, the Dutch command rust coaxing him to lie down. Torres lingered by the door. "Brass likes you now, but watch the fallout. Reed's got to justify the logs." His warning was brotherly, born of shared foxholes. By midday, the base buzzed with subdued energy, memos circulating via secure nets, maintenance crews re-sweeping ranges with enhanced detectors. Elena attended a follow-up brief in the ops center. Walls lined with monitors, flickering hazard maps. Klein projected updates, the stockpile neutralized, but traces prompted soil sampling across adjacent sectors. "Vasquez's alert expands scope," she noted, her voice carrying to the assembled officers. Eyes turned to Elena, a mix of respect and reservation. She nodded acknowledgement, Rex's presence at her side a quiet testament. Afternoon brought individual evaluations, handlers logging K-9 performance, Elena detailing Rex's cues in exhaustive notes. The pen scratched across paper, the scent of ink mingling with lingering damp. Outside, thunder rumbled distant, mirroring the internal storm. Duty's rigid lines tested by conscience's pull. Reed passed her station, pausing. "Colin's report goes up today. Your input weighs heavy." It was counsel, not command, hinting at the public reckoning brewing. As evening fell, the rain eased to a mist, floodlights haloing the parade ground. Elena walked Rex on a short leash, their shadows merging on the wet pavement. The base's rhythm persisted, sentries pacing, radios murmuring coordinates, but fractures showed. Extra patrols, whispered debates in the mess. Her defiance, once a solitary stand, now drew witnesses from higher ranks, forcing the system to confront its blind spots. In the hush before taps, Rex's steady gait reminded her. Loyalty wasn't blind obedience, but the courage to alert when the path ahead concealed peril. The inquiry's shadow lengthened, rippling through the chain, where one dog's instinct and one handler's resolve began to reshape the unspoken rules of trust. Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far stories of courage and integrity can reach. The fluorescent hum of the operations center filled the air as Sergeant Elena Vasquez entered, the door hissing shut behind her. Rex padded at her heel, his nails clicking softly on the polished tile, a counterpoint to the low murmur of voices from clustered officers. It was 800 sharp, the base's morning routine in full swing outside, Humvees idling on the access road, the sharp scent of diesel cutting through the center's recycled air. Elena's uniform hung crisp, but the weight of the past days pressed like an unseen harness. The colonel's audit had escalated overnight. Now, a joint review from Fort Bragg's safety board convened here, dissecting the range incident layer by layer. Captain Harlan Reed stood at the head of the conference table, his sleeves rolled to the elbows, revealing forearms etched with service tattoos. Maps and reports splayed before him, illuminated by a projector casting stark grids on the wall. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Hale had returned, joined by Major Lisa Chen from the EOD detachment, her tablet linked to live feeds from the secured site. 4 other handlers sat in attendance, including Torres, their postures erect despite the early hour. Elena took her seat, Rex settling beside her chair with a quiet sigh, his ears attuned to the room's undercurrents. "Commence review," Hale stated, his voice even as he activated the recording device. The digital beep echoed, formalizing the proceeding. "Focus. Procedural integration of K-9 alerts in live fire environments. Incident of 14th October, grid 4712. Chen leaned forward, her stylus tapping the screen. EOD recap. Sarin precursor cache, circa 1987, unmanifested relocation. Vapor dispersal minimal but lethal, threshold exceeded by 0. 3 parts per million at alert point. Slides advanced, soil core samples, spectral analyses glowing in blues and reds, the data impersonal yet damning. Elena's gaze traced the lines. Rex's nose had pierced what machines and logs had missed. Reed nodded to her. "Sergeant Vasquez, reiterate handler actions." Elena spoke without notes. Her tone clipped and factual. Unit advanced per order. Rex exhibited Type 2 alert. Full stop, vocalization, targeted excavation. I assessed risk, requested pause per FM 319. 4, Section 4.2, discretionary hold on imminent threat. The manual's words anchored her, a bulwark against the scrutiny. Hale's pen scratched across his pad. "And Captain Reed's countermand?" Reed interjected smoothly. "Affirmative. Advance confirmed by dual sweeps. Deviation risked formation integrity." The room thickened with implication. Chen projected a timeline. 0712, unit deploys 0708. Rex halts, 0722, investigation commences, 0725, evacuation. Delay 7 minutes, no casualties, but potential for plume exposure across 12 personnel. Murmurs stirred from the handlers. Torres's fingers drummed once on the table edge before stilling. Elena felt the moral fault line widen. Her stand had prevented harm, yet it challenged the log's sanctity, the chain's unyielding thread. Rex shifted, his flank brushing her calf, a silent reminder of the trust that had tipped the scale. Hale addressed the group. "This isn't indictment, it's refinement, but precedents matter. K-9 discretion. When does it supersede command?" Chen added, Data shows olfactory hits at 95% efficacy in legacy hazards, yet protocol prioritizes verified intel to avoid false positives. Elena's pulse steadied. She raised her hand fractionally. "Permission to speak, sir?" Hale nodded. "Rex's record, 0 false alerts in 247 ops. Integration training emphasizes handler judgment as force multiplier, not subordinate." Her words landed measured, echoing the quiet discipline of their drills, the rain-slicked fields, the scent trails fading into dawn mist. Reed's jaw tightened imperceptibly. "Noted, Sergeant, but in sim or real, hesitation cascades, unit cohesion demands sync." The exchange hung, witnesses to the tension. Duty's rigid frame versus conscience's subtle pull. Outside, a low rumble of thunder rolled in from the east, rain pattering against the reinforced windows. The review paused for Chen to pull up archival footage. Grainy 1980s reels of test sites, canisters vanishing into earth without notation, bureaucratic shadows swallowing details. As the session broke for consultation, handlers rose to stretch. The scrape of chairs, a brief disruption. Torres sidled close to Elena in the corridor, voice low amid the echo of boots. "They're circling protocol like it's the enemy. Your call saved us, but Reed's defending his book." Elena nodded, clipping Rex's lead for a water break. "Facts over fallout. Rex doesn't lie." The dog's eyes met hers, dark and unwavering. As they stepped into the adjoining yard, puddles reflected the grey sky, the air heavy with ozone and wet gravel. She filled his bowl from a hose, the stream cold against her gloved hand, watching him lap steadily. By 1100, the review reconvened in a larger annex, now with base legal observers. 2 captains from JAG, their briefcases unclasped on the side table. Hale outlined findings. "Lapse in archival chain confirmed. Recommend mandatory K-9 olfactory sweeps pre-live fire, integrated with EOD protocols." Applause didn't follow. Instead, a ripple of salutes acknowledged the shift. But eyes turned to Elena. "Sergeant, your input prompted this. Formal commendation pending, contingent on full report." The words carried weight. Recognition, yet tethered to scrutiny. Reed met her gaze across the table, a nod fractionally deeper than regulation, conceding the ground her resolve had claimed. Afternoon shifted to practicals, the unit redeployed to a sanitized auxiliary range, rain-slicked but cleared. Handlers ran tandem drills, dogs quartering the mud under spotter oversight. Elena directed Rex through a vapor sim, faint wisps from hidden emitters, his alerts crisp, leash taut in her grip. "Sit," she commanded in Dutch. "Zit," and he complied, barking once to mark. Torres's Luna mirrored, but the exercise felt layered now, every pause a test of the emerging protocols. From the observation post, Chen noted times, her radio crackling updates to Hale. As dusk approached, the base's floodlights flickered on, casting golden pools across the wet tarmac. Eleanor logged the session in the kennel office, the lamplight warm on stacks of forms. Rex curled on his mat, the day's exertions easing from his frame. Whispers from the mess hall filtered through, the review's outcomes climbing to division level, Elena's name in the dispatches, not as outlier, but exemplar. Yet doubt lingered. Reed's earlier defense hinted at personal stakes, the captain's career woven into those flawed logs. In the quiet of evening stand down, Elena walked the perimeter with Rex, their footfalls sinking on the damp path. Sentries nodded as they passed, the air alive with the chirp of crickets and distant generator hum. The institution stirred, its machinery adapting, new sweeps mandated, training modules revised. Her defiance, once a solitary fracture, now drew public eyes, reports filed, commendations drafted, the moral choice rippling through ranks. Rex's leash guided them forward, a bond unbroken by scrutiny, into the gathering night where loyalty tested the system's core. The rain had ceased, leaving the earth to breathe. But the inquiry's momentum built, pulling all toward a reckoning where conscience and command would finally align. The morning mist clung to the base like a shroud, muting the sharp edges of Fort Bragg's training grounds. Sergeant Elena Vasquez stood at the edge of the auxiliary range, her breath visible in the chill air as the K-9 unit assembled under overcast skies. Rex sat rigidly at her side, his coat still damp from an early rinse, the faint scent of shampoo mingling with the loamy earth. The inquiry's formal review had concluded the day before, but its echoes lingered in the clipped salutes and sidelong glances among the handlers. Captain Harlan Reed's voice cut through the haze, steady as ever. "Unit, form up for protocol validation. New directives from Corps. K-9 integration trials commence now." Elena adjusted her harness, the straps settling into familiar grooves, while Rex's ears flicked toward the command. The review had mandated changes, olfactory sweeps as standard pre-drill, handlers granted brief holds on alerts without immediate countermand. It was progress, born of her stand. Yet the air hummed with unspoken friction. Reed paced the line, his boots sinking slightly into the softened turf, eyes scanning each pair, man and dog, as if measuring the recalibrated balance. "Vasquez Torres, lead the first sweep. Grid beta, full pattern." The unit advanced in echelon, leashes taut, the patter of paws and footfalls sinking like a subdued cadence. Eleanor's focus narrowed to Rex's gait, the subtle tension in his shoulders as he quartered the wind. The range, freshly marked with white stakes, simulated a contested zone. Pylons for cover, emitters releasing trace simulants buried at varying depths. Radios whispered positions. "Alpha team, clear to marker 3. The static a constant undercurrent. Torres flanked her, Luna mirroring Rex's path, their dogs' noses working in tandem, invisible threads pulling them toward hidden threats. At the halfway point, Rex paused, his body coiling like a spring. Elena felt the leash go rigid, her hands steadying as she scanned the ground, a low depression masked by trampled grass. "Alert!" she called softly, voice pitched for the spotters in the tower. No bark this time, just the freeze. His eyes locked on the spot. Torres halted Luna nearby, confirming with a nod. From the observation post, a voice crackled, "Hold position, confirming." The unit rippled to a stop behind them, a wave of disciplined stillness. Reed approached from the rear, his expression neutral, tablet in hand. "Report, Sergeant." Elena crouched, gloved fingers hovering over the soil without disturbing it. Behavioral, full stop, targeted stare, consistent with hazard signature. Rex whined low, pawing once at the edge, the motion precise. No defiance in her tone, just facts. Protocol now allowed this pause, a small victory etched into the manual overnight. Reed knelt beside her, peering at the spot, the mist beading on his cap. "Emitter confirmed?" He radioed the control. "Tower, verify grid beta 4. Static answered, then affirmation. "Positive simulant, sarin analog, depth 2 feet. Relief washed subtle through the line, handlers exhaling in unison. But Reed's gaze lingered on Eleanor, a flicker of something, respect perhaps, or the residue of concession. "Good hold, resume on my mark." As the unit pressed on, Elena clipped a treat to Rex's harness, murmuring, "Good." The Dutch praise, drawing a brief tail wag. Their bond, tested and affirmed, felt like an anchor in the shifting protocols. By midday, the trials expanded to the full unit, rotating pairs under Hale's distant oversight. He dispatched aides to observe, their notepads filling with metrics. The mess tent offered a brief respite, the air thick with steam from chow lines, boiled potatoes, stewed beef, the metallic tang of field rations. Elena sat with Torres at a scarred bench, Rex at her feet, gnawing a chew toy, the rubber squeaking rhythmically. "They're watching close," Torres said, fork pausing mid-air. "Your alert's the benchmark now. Reed's implementing it verbatim. Elena nodded, sipping coffee that burned her tongue. It's the dogs doing the work. We just listen. Word filtered through the ranks. The audit had uncovered 3 more unlogged sites across Bragg, echoes of Cold War haste. Elena's incident report, appended with Rex's performance logs, climbed to division command, her name cited in commendation drafts. Yet the human cost surfaced in quiet moments, handlers confiding doubts over the log's reliability, the erosion of blind trust in sweeps. In the afternoon session, during a tandem drill, Luna hesitated on a false plant, Torres overriding with a sharp tug. "Clear," he called, but his eyes met Elena's with a question. How far did instinct stretch before it frayed the chain? As the sun broke through, casting slanted rays across the range, Reed called a halt for debrief. The unit formed a loose circle on the grass. Dogs panting at heels, the scent of sweat and wet fur rising. Metrics 98% hit rate on simulants. Integration holds average 2. 1 minute, negligible delay. He glanced at Elena. Vasquez's model proves viable. Cores approves rollout. Nods circulated, but Hale's aide stepped forward, folder in hand. "Sergeant, Colonel requests your presence at 1600, testimonial for the formal record." The words landed like a promotion pin. Public now, her choice dissected in transcripts, witnesses from legal to logistics. Elena saluted, Rex rising with her as the unit dispersed. Back at the kennels, she hosed down gear, the water sluicing over harnesses into the drain, carrying away the day's grit. The building's fans whirred steadily, filtering the air as other handlers logged entries nearby. Sergeant Klein approached, her tablet dimmed. "You're becoming the case study, but it costs. Reed's under review for the logs." Elena paused, wringing out a lead. "System's bigger than one captain, ma'am." Klein's response was a faint smile. "True, your loyalty to Rex. It's reshaping how we value it." The testimonial convened in a stark conference room, walls panelled in faux wood, the clock ticking toward evening. Hale sat at the table's head, flanked by a stenographer and Chen, their faces illuminated by a single overhead light. Eleanor entered with Rex, the door clicking shut, sealing the room's tension. "State your observations," Hale prompted, recorder whirring to life. She recounted the morning of the alert, the freeze, the order, the soil's yield. Her voice remained even, gestures minimal, hand to Rex's head once, a subtle stroke. Deviation was necessary, instinct confirmed what logs obscured. Hale leaned back, fingers steepled. And the moral weight, obeying command versus K-9 bond. The question pierced, drawing the room's focus. Elena met his eyes. "Duty includes foresight, sir. Rex's trust is part of the chain. Ignoring it risks more than a drill." Rex sat alert, sensing the gravity, his breath a soft rhythm in the quiet. Chen noted something then. "Your actions prompt reform. Mandatory dual verification sweeps. K-9 veto rights in low-vis scenarios. Affirmation, yet the cost lingered. Careers like Reed's teetering, the institution's legacy bending under scrutiny. As she exited into the cooling dusk, the base's lights winked on, outlining paths and perimeters. Eleanor walked Rex toward the parade ground, their shadows elongating on the pavement. Sentries stood post, rifles slung, the air carrying the first chill of night. Whispers in the barracks would grow, her story, Rex's alert, a symbol now, rippling toward broader change. The moral tension eased fractionally, conscience yielding ground to reform, but the handler's resolve held firm. Loyalty's quiet strength tested in the ranks' unyielding forge. In the hush of taps, as bugles echoed across the grounds, the path forward clarified. One act of trust amplifying through command, toward a system where instinct and order finally converged. The base's evening hush settled like a blanket over Fort Bragg, broken only by the distant thrum of generators and the occasional bark from the kennels. Sergeant Elena Vasquez made her way to the command briefing hall, Rex's leash a steady loop in her hand, the pavement still warm from the day's sun. Floodlights cast elongated shadows, turning the walk into a procession of quiet anticipation. The testimonial from hours earlier lingered in her mind. Hale's probing questions, the stenographer's keys clicking like a metronome. But duty pulled her forward. A summons from division had arrived via encrypted message, an expanded tribunal, witnesses from across the installation to address the incident's broader implications. Inside the hall, the air was thick with the scent of polished oak and fresh coffee from a side urn. Rows of folding chairs faced a raised dais, where Colonel Marcus Hale conferred with Major Lisa Chen and a cluster of officers in starched uniforms. Captain Harlan Reed stood apart, his arms crossed, gaze fixed on a wall-mounted screen displaying the range's grid overlay. Elena entered through the side door, saluting the room's occupants before taking a seat near the front. Rex lay at her feet, his body heat a subtle comfort against the cool linoleum, ears perked toward the gathering murmurs. The tribunal convened at 1900 hours. Hale calling the assembly to order with a sharp rap of his gavel. 20 personnel filled the space, handlers, EOD techs, range safety officers, even a JAG representative with a leather-bound notebook. This hearing examines the 14 October alert and its systemic ramifications, Hale announced, his voice resonant in the vaulted room. Not blame, but blueprint. Sergeant Vasquez, your testimony initiates. Elena rose, posture impeccable, Rex rising with her as if on cue. She approached the dais, the click of her boots echoing, and faced the panel. Proceed, Hale prompted, the recorder's light blinking red. Elena's recount was precise, a distillation of the morning. The unit's advance, Rex's abrupt halt, the order to continue, her measured pushback rooted in training doctrine. The soil anomaly yielded a canister, real hazard, not sim. Rex's alert preceded visual confirmation by 47 seconds. She gestured subtly to the dog, who sat unmoving, his dark eyes scanning the faces, slides projected behind her, timelines syncing K-9 cues with EOD data, vapor models showing plume spread that would have engulfed the formation. Gasps rippled softly from the rear rows, a handler covering his mouth with a fist. Chen interjected, her tablet projecting archival discrepancies. Logs from 87 omitted relocation, bureaucratic oversight during base expansions. Vasquez's deviation exposed a vulnerability affecting 17 rangers across Bragg. Reed shifted in his seat, the screen highlighting his signature on recent sweeps. The captain's testimony followed, his words guarded. Protocol upheld verified intel. The hold disrupted tempo, but outcome validates the risk assessment. His tone carried no defensiveness, just the weight of command under fire. The logs now a chain around his neck, witnesses noting every pause. Questions flowed from the floor, the room's tension coiling like a spring. A safety officer queried olfactory limits. How do we calibrate dogs against human tech? Elena responded evenly, citing Rex's certification thresholds. Parts per billion versus detectors parts per million. Integration amplifies, sir, not replacement. Torres called next, affirmed from his seat. Seen it in theater, instinct flags what scans miss. The exchange built layers, moral tensions surfacing in the silences, obedience's safety net frayed by forgotten perils, loyalty to a partner challenging the chain's iron links. Hale steered toward consequence, his folder thick with prelim reports. This incident prompts Directive 47 Alpha, mandatory K-9 pre-sweeps for legacy sites, handler veto on alerts pending verification, rollout to all airborne units by quarter's end. Nods circulated, but a JAG captain raised a hand. Legal exposure. Deviation could set precedent for insubordination claims. The words hung, drawing eyes to Elena. She met them squarely. Precedent for lives saved, ma'am. Duty evolves with threats. Rex whined softly, a low vibration through her boot, underscoring the human K-9 pact amid institutional gears grinding toward change. As testimonies wrapped, the tribunal recessed for deliberation, attendees filing into the corridor where fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Handlers clustered in low voices, the air carrying the faint ozone of tension. Torres clapped Elena's shoulder lightly. "You're rewriting the book, Vasquez. Reed's taking heat, but it's clean." She nodded, leading Rex to a patch of grass outside, the night's chill nipping at exposed skin. Dew formed on the blades, cool under her fingers as she scratched behind his ears. "We held the line," she murmured, the Dutch brave slipping out, his tail thumping once in response. Deliberation stretched into the night, the hall's windows glowing like beacons. At 2200, Hale reconvened, his verdict measured. No fault assigned to field actions. Commendation for Vasquez and Rex. Silver Star consideration, pending higher review. Captain Reed, retraining on archival protocols. Systemic reform, full audit of Cold War sites, K-9 units elevated in hazard doctrine. Applause broke the hush, restrained but genuine, salutes snapping up in waves. Reed approached Elena post-adjournment, extending a hand. "Your call was right, unit stronger." His grip was firm, eyes holding a rare vulnerability, the cost of integrity etching lines on his face. Outside, the base slumbered under stars pricked through thin clouds, the hum of night patrols a steady pulse. Eleanor walked Rex back to the kennels, their path lit by sodium lamps casting orange pools. Whispers would spread by dawn, memos to commands, her story in training briefs, the ripple touching distant posts. The public reckoning had unfolded, not in shouts but in facts laid bare, witnesses bearing testimony to a handler's conscience reshaping the ranks. Rex's stride matched hers, unwavering, a bond that had ignited reform from the ground up. In the kennel's dim light, as she secured the run, the weight lifted fractionally. The institution, rigid as ever, bent toward justice. Loyalty's quiet forge yielding a legacy of trust renewed. If this story already has your respect, hit the like button. It helps the story of Elena Vasquez reach those who still believe in honor. The first rays of dawn pierced the eastern horizon, gilding the dew-kissed parade ground at Fort Bragg. Sergeant Elena Vasquez stood in formation with the K-9 unit, her boots aligned precisely on the chalked line, the faint scent of fresh-cut grass mingling with the crisp bite of morning air. Rex sat at her heel, his breath steady and warm against her calf, a silent sentinel amid the assembling ranks. The base stirred with purposeful rhythm, sentries changing shifts at the gates, the low growl of idling engines from the motor pool, and the distant snap of flags whipping in the breeze. Weeks had passed since the tribunal, but its verdicts echoed in every drill, every log entry, a subtle shift in the institution's pulse. Captain Harlan Reed called the unit to attention, his voice carrying the honed edge of command. Parade formation for commendation ceremony. Eyes front. The handlers snapped to, chests rising in unison. As a brass quintet assembled on the platform, their instruments gleaming under the rising sun. Eleanor's gaze remained fixed ahead, but she felt the weight of eyes upon her, fellow soldiers from adjacent units, drawn by the whispers of reform rippling through the post. Directive 47 Alpha had taken root. K-9 sweeps now mandatory before any live-fire op, handlers empowered with vetted discretion. The chain of command flexed to accommodate instinct's precision. Rex's alert had unearthed not just a hazard, but a blueprint for trust. The ceremony commenced with measured formality, Colonel Marcus Hale stepping to the podium, his dress blues immaculate against the oak backdrop. "Today, we honor actions that fortified our readiness," he intoned, the microphone amplifying his words across the field. Sergeant Elena Vasquez and her partner Rex exemplify the moral courage embedded in our doctrine. A murmur swept the ranks, boots shifting subtly on the gravel. Elena stepped forward when called, Rex trotting beside her, the leash a taut line of shared resolve. Hale pinned the commendation ribbon to her chest, a silver star, its edges catching the light, then knelt to affix a unit citation collar to Rex's harness. The dog's ears perked, accepting the gesture without fanfare, his dark eyes reflecting the colonel's steady gaze. From one buried oversight came clarity for all, Hale continued, addressing the assembly. Audits across Bragg and sister bases have neutralized 14 legacy sites, averting risks to thousands. Vasquez's stand, rooted in loyalty to partner and duty, sparks this legacy. Applause rose, restrained yet resonant. Salutes held long in the crisp air. Reed stood nearby, his posture unyielding, but a faint nod toward Elena spoke volumes. The log's shadow had lifted, his retraining complete, the captain now advocating for the protocols he'd once defended against. In the quiet aftermath, as the quintet played Anchors Away, Elena felt the transformation settle, not in triumph, but in the steady cadence of boots dispersing, the unit's cohesion renewed. Post-ceremony, the K-9 handlers reconvened at the auxiliary range, the sun climbing to warm the earth. Elena led Rex through a validation drill, their path tracing fresh grids marked with stakes. Pattern left vol, she commanded softly in Dutch, and he quartered the wind, nose low over the turf, pausing at a simulant hide without hesitation. Torres and Luna flanked them, the tandem seamless under the new guidelines. Spotters in the tower radioed confirmations, alert verified, hold cleared, the static A affirming hum. No fractures now. The moral tension had forged integration. Conscience woven into command. By midday, the base's administrative hum intensified. Memos disseminated via secure channels, training modules updated with Elena's case study embedded. She attended a brief in the ops center, walls lined with monitors displaying hazard overlays, expanded nationwide. Major Lisa Chen projected metrics. K-9 efficacy up 22% in legacy sweeps. Handler's discretion logs show 0 unsubstantiated holds. Elena contributed notes on Rex's behavioral cues, her pen scratching steadily across the form, the scent of dry erase markers sharp in the confined space. Klein, the coordinator, leaned in. Your input's in the field manual revision. You're mentoring the next cycle. The words carried quiet weight. Her defiance, once a risk, now a cornerstone, rippling to handlers at Pendleton and Lejeune. Afternoon brought a rare downtime, Elena walking Rex along the perimeter trail, the gravel crunching underfoot, pine needles releasing their resinous tang. The base unfolded around them, medics drilling in the yard, the whir of a Black Hawk lifting from the pad, rotors slicing the blue sky. Soldiers nodded as they passed. A private murmuring, "Saw the ceremony, ma'am. Rex is legend." Elena returned the salute crisply, but inside, vulnerability stirred. The cost of that morning's choice, the tribunal's glare, Reed's shadowed gaze, had etched deeper lines, yet yielded reform's quiet fruit. Rex nudged her hand, his wet nose a grounding press, their bond the unyielding thread through hierarchy's weave. As evening drew near, the unit gathered in the mess hall, the air alive with clatter of trays and low conversation. Steam rose from vats of chili and cornbread, the fluorescent lights casting warm pools on scarred tables. Reed joined their table unannounced, tray in hand. "Vasquez," he said, sitting across from her, Rex eyeing him curiously from the floor. "Corps wants you for the symposium next month. K-9 integration keynote." His tone was professional, laced with the respect earned in reckoning. Elena met his eyes evenly. "Honored, sir, for the unit." No more words needed. The captain's nod sealed the mentorship, his career steadied by the very protocols her integrity had birthed. Nightfall blanketed the base, Stars pricking the velvet sky as Elena secured the kennel. The runs hummed with settling dogs, the ventilation fans a soothing drone. She brushed Rex's coat one last time, the curry comb gliding through fur still warm from the day's exertions. "Rust," she whispered, and he curled on his mat, eyes half-lidded in trust. Outside, the floodlights hummed, outlining sentries' patrols, the institution's vigilant heart. What began as a single halt on the range had expanded, careers realigned, doctrines refined, a legacy of moral strength etched into the ranks. Eleanor's conscience, amplified by Rex's instinct, had transformed rigidity into resilience, honor not in glory, but in the silent bonds that safeguarded them all. In the hush before lights out, as the base exhaled into repose, the path ahead gleamed clearer. Loyalty's forge, yielding justice from the earth's hidden perils. Subscribe for more stories of loyalty, courage, and justice within the ranks. Thank you for watching the case of Her Dog Wouldn't Cross the Firing Range. Seconds later, a buried stockpile triggered an unexpected alert. See you in the next one.